The present is the most sacred space. This is a key concept in my home method. Why? Because a lot of people don't realize how much they escape this most powerful of spaces. The most important space is the here and now. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to our Awaken and Align series. Today, our topic is on navigating anxiety. So anxiety is part of the human experience. It is something that it's going to be part of our journey in this world. And I want to start off by differentiating between typical anxiety that's part of our human experience and somebody who's diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. I think a lot of people, mix up the two. And, we want to take preventative measures so it doesn't get to that. But if you are already you are diagnosed with anxiety disorder, it's very important that you seek help and you seek treatment for that, and you make sure that you're getting the right resources. But today I'm going to be addressing the typical anxiety that's part of our human experience. So the root of anxiety is fear and worry. This is the root of anxiety. And we have to understand that's going to be a natural part of our path. But there are ways that we can, learn to navigate it, learn to channel it, learn to direct it, and also, like I said, take preventative measures so it doesn't become more than it is, because anything that you don't work on starts to escalate. Any symptom. So we can have symptoms of something, but not have the disorder, because things progress. And so we shouldn't just leave ourselves, without learning tools to regulate ourselves until we get to a point where it's harder to regulate. So it's important to understand that, first of all, when we feel anxious, a lot of times it is associated with the future. You're thinking about a moment that has not yet come. And you're connected more to that moment than the present. That's why an antidote to anxiety is coming back to the moment, coming back to the here and now. This is why breathing exercise is really powerful when someone is anxious. Why? Because the body is already present. As I always say, the body is already in submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you actually are doing breathing exercises, you're connecting to the part, the being that is already obeying Allah's command, because the body has to be present all the time. If the body is not present, it can't obey Allah's command. It can't do what it's supposed to do, right? So your cells are present. They're doing their function. Your heart is present. It's doing its function. Your lungs are present. The fact that you can take a breath right now is because the body is in the here and now, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. You don't command your body to do what it needs to do, in the sense that you don't tell your cells work. You don't tell your digestive system to work. You don't tell your brain to process information. SubhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already created this, your body with those tools, with that capacity to do what it needs to do. It's in, without you telling it, it's already in motion. It's already in submission to Allah. So when you connect to your body and you start doing breathing exercises, you do what it's doing. You learn to be in the moment. The present is the most sacred space. This is a key concept in my home method. Why? Because a lot of people don't realize how much they escape this most powerful of spaces. The most important space is the here and now. The present is the most sacred space because it's the only space you can connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the only space that you can connect to yourself. It's the only space where you can actually make a difference, where you can make a change. Because you can't take a step if your mind is in the future. You can't take a step towards change if your mind is in the past. The only place and space and time that you can actually take a step forward in life and have some impact on your life is in the moment that you're living right now. This is where you can actually have the power to decide, I'm going to take this step today. I'm going to change this. I'm going to do this today. Whatever goal you have, this moment is the only moment that you actually have the power to do that. And so when you're in the future, you cut yourself off from the moment, the only moment you actually have control, the only moment in which you have power. And when you are constantly connected to a moment that has not yet come, you lose power. So what is an experience a lot of people have when they experience anxiety? A lot of powerlessness. They feel at the mercy of everything that happens to them. And then they perceive threats where there are no threats. So the more your anxiety increases, the more that you see a threat in things outside of you that are not threats, that are actually not harming you, but you're always looking out for those things. You're always in the next moment. You're always looking out for the next, possibility of a threat, rather than being in the moment that you are in with the reality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in front of you. And who maximizes on this the most? Shaitan. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, indeed, mankind was created anxious. This is part of us. It's going to be part of our human experience. But Shaitan understands this. So what does Shaitan do? He's going to maximize on your tendency to be in the future. And what should we always do? Try to always come back to the present. It's a muscle you have to build. You see, if the mind is off in the future or the past, it cannot be in service of the heart. In the home method, I say the mind is the servant, the heart is the lead. What does that mean? Okay, if I want this heart to be awakened to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I want this heart to be present in prayer, if I want this heart to be nourished, I have to keep this mind as the servant of the heart. So what does that mean? I have to keep the mind in the present. So it's not about perfection. It's about, I noticed that I'm going into next moment. Come back. The present is the most sacred space. Why are you going there? It has nothing to offer you. The future is an illusion. The past has not yet come. The past has already passed and the future has not yet come. In psychology, there's this really powerful understanding within the existential psychology branch, and it is this. They say depression is in the gap between where you actually are and where you think you should be. So I'm going to say that again. In existential psychology, we say depression is in the gap between where you actually are, your present, the reality that exists right now, and where you think you should be. So this illusion, this future time and place where you think you're going to be happy, where you think everything is going to go right. A lot of people place themselves in this gap where they're not enjoying their present and they're not maximizing their present, and they don't feel like the present has anything to offer them because it doesn't look like the future that they want. And so they disconnect from the present and they're not yet in the future because it doesn't yet exist. So they get stuck in this gap. And they say this is the gap where people struggle the most because you're not maximizing the reality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put right in front of you. And this is why Shukr is such a powerful practice for people who struggle with anxiety, because for you to engage in Shukr, what do you have to do? You have to be present. How could you be grateful for something you're not connected to? How could you be grateful for something that you are actually, not in the present to witness? So Shukr requires that you come back to the moment that exists and you start connecting to everything around you that is already existing and very well alive in your, happening in your life. So Shukr is a great way to, number one, fight off that waswasa of Shaitan who wants you to always be driven by fear. Remember I said anxiety is rooted in fear and worry. And about what? About perceived threats. I'm not saying actual threats. Perceived threats. You view it as a threat. He's going to always give you threats where he's going to give you these perceived threats where you think, that's going to harm me. What if this happens? What if that happens? So Shaitan's biggest weapon is fear. This is why a lot of people are anxious, because Shaitan if he can keep you in a state of fearing the next moment, you will never maximize the moment he knows is the most powerful, which is the present. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Shaitan threatens you with poverty and orders you to, or invites you to immorality, while Allah promises you forgiveness from him and bounty. And Allah is all encompassing and knowing. I want you to notice a distinction here. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Shaitan, he talks about Shaitan's threats. When he talks about himself, he says promise. So again, I said anxiety has a lot to do with you think that things are a threat to you, safety, emotionally, spirit, any kind of threat to your comfort, to your well-being, to your things that you think are going to disrupt you, right? The way Shaitan works is he functions according to threats. Things that are threats 100% real? No. Threats are often not real. A threat is, someone could threaten you. It has no basis in reality. It has no basis in truth. So it's really interesting that in this verse, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Shaitan, he says he threatens. But when he talks about himself, he says he promises. A promise is rooted in truth. A promise cannot be shaken, especially when it is Allah who promises. So Shaitan threatens you with poverty. What is poverty? Poverty is not just I lose money. Poverty is a loss at any level, a loss of security at any level. It's a loss. It's a loss of emotional security, financial security, any kind, relational security. So Shaitan will always be there telling you, what if you lose that? You want to get close to Allah. What if you lose that? Threatens you with loss constantly. Threatens you with that state of fear. You want to get close to Allah. Look, this might happen to you. What if that happens to you? What if this person reacts this way? What if that happens? What if you're in this danger? What if this? Constantly threatening you. Creating more things for you to perceive as threats in your life. And he invites you to immorality. And what does Allah promise you with? He promises you with forgiveness from him and bounty. And Allah is all encompassing and knowing. I feel like, when you read this, it's not a coincidence. Allah, the end of this verse is this. Allah is all encompassing and knowing, meaning that he knows what's going to happen to you. He encompasses everything that you are worried about happening. He encompasses it. He is all of those things you're worried about. It's in his control. So anchoring ourselves in the Quran, in what Allah has promised, a lot of people are disconnected from Allah's promises. So what do they connect more to? The threats of Shaitan. So the more you are cut off from Allah's words and his promises, the more you're going to anchor yourself, or you're going to be susceptible to feeding into Shaitan's threats. Oh, what if that? What if you just become, you become almost, Shaitan maximizes on you being naive. You believe anything that he gives you. But when your anchoring is in Allah and his promises, you understand with him you cannot lose. So again, these are just tools to help you anchor yourself in moments where you're worried about all these possible things happen. Wait, what did Allah promise? What did Allah say about himself? And say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Shaitan is getting to me. He's making me, think of all these things as possible harm to me when maybe they're not. Making me think that, bad is coming my way. Making me think that the future is gloomy, trying to always make me feel like I'm in a state of threat. I'm in a state of poverty. I'm in a state of loss. But with Allah, there's always abundance. So first we remember, when we think about how can we navigate anxiety in a way that empowers our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brings us closer to him, and in a way that allows us to receive more nourishment in our life, is that number one, like I said, we remember that anxiety is not who we are, but a natural part of the human experience. We remember that many factors play a role in anxiety, but Allah only holds a person responsible for doing what is in their power, nothing else. And then we remember that anxiety is an experience and not the destination. And our job is to seek knowledge and gain the tools we need to navigate the experience. It's not about I can never feel anxious. This is not realistic and it's not human. This human experience we're in is going to at times put us in situations where we are going to be anxious. But we remember that anxiety is not the end. It is the means. It's not who we are. It's not a permanent destination. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a shafi, and this is not just, he's the healer, not just with physical challenges, but also mental, emotional, and spiritual ones too. He's the one who brings relief. And there's always hope for relief, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's always hope. So this is why it's so important to utilize the tools Allah gave us. For example, istighfar. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that istighfar is the remover of worries, the remover of anxiety, anxiousness. So what is the relationship here? Is that you're engaging in istighfar, and so many people attest to this. They start doing istighfar, they feel a calmness enter their hearts. Because in those moments, you're anchoring yourself in what is a value in front of Allah. And it intercepts those thoughts that can spiral. Dhikr has a really powerful cognitive restructuring component or redirecting component, where your thought is, you're thinking about one thing, at least one thing, you intercept it. You cut off the spiral by saying, Astaghfirullah. That thought was not helpful. That thought is just creating more fear for me. That thought is just feeding into the threats of Shaitan. And the more you do this work, the more you catch yourself earlier, before you catastrophize, before you spiral. So that's really what progress is. It's not that you're never going to get negative thoughts. It's not that you're never going to have fears. It's not that you're never going to have worries. But your growth and your maturity and your progress comes when you are more connected to yourself and you're aware of what comes up within you, and your ability to channel them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the right direction becomes stronger. But it's not, I never have anxiety. We have to stop having a black and white view of this human experience we're on, where it's only positive, we're only doing well when we never experience anxiety. And if we feel anxiety, it must mean that we're weak, or it must mean that we're not good with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No. But Allah has given us tools. Why would Allah give us tools if He did not think we were going to experience it? Why would the Prophet ﷺ tell us to do istighfar and tell us that it removes worries, if it alleviates our worries, if we were not expected to have worries? So these are just some tools to help you understand that emotions undirected start to direct you. And really what I want to stress more than anything is building the muscle of being in the moment. You are listening to someone in conversation and your mind starts thinking about what you're going to say next. Remind yourself, no, let me just be in the moment. Let me not think about what I'm going to say next. Let me just absorb fully what they're going to say. Slowing down. One of the exercises that I give people who are anxious is, slowing down in the sense that you don't need to always rush to the next moment. If you're cleaning your counter, slow down. You find yourself rushing, slow down. Just clean your counter slowly. Watch what it does to your nervous system. You regulate yourself. The most anxious people have a problem sitting still. They need to always be doing something. They need to always be engaged. They can't sit at home. They can't, they always have to be doing something. And this is harmful. This is not balanced. Because and it's also a pattern of escapism. You're escaping the discomfort. So you always feel like you have to fill that void. You always have to do something so that you don't experience the agitation of slowing down, of being still. But the more you do this work, the more you realize how beautiful it is to slow down, how we need it. We're in this fast-paced society. That's why we have some of the highest anxiety rates in the world. And it's because we live in a culture where we think more is better. We think rushing is always better. We think always doing something is strong, and staying home is weak. It's like people have these ideas now that like you have to always be on all the time, and that's not healthy. That's not balanced. So learning to slow down. If you're with your family and you're spending time with them, try to be present. Don't think about the next moment. Don't think about, okay, well, what am I going to do? Like you kind of trying to rush through something so you could just jump to the next moment. That's what anxiety is built upon. This moment, what anxiety is also really centered around, and always having the need to go to the next moment, is you're always telling yourself this moment is not good enough. The next moment is better. That's what you're telling yourself all the time. This moment is not good enough, then I need to always be in the next moment because that moment is better. Or I need to be in the next moment because that's where harm is and I have to be on guard all the time. As if we are really in control over the next moment. It's an illusion. So a lot of a beautiful thing you can tell yourself, if you're always someone who's in the next moment, say, this moment is enough. What I have right now is enough. This moment is enough. I don't need to be in the next moment. A lot of times people, as they're wrapping up one thing, they're thinking about how to experience a new thing. It's like an addiction, right? To the next thrill, to the next thing. And it's like, why can't you just enjoy this moment and let that be enough? Why do I need to already be planning something else? Because the present is not enough for a lot of people. And so the more that you can just settle, and it's going to be uncomfortable at first for you, especially if you're always in the next moment. If you're eating and you eat fast, like I said, if you're cleaning and you're always like, you're like rushing through everything. If you're talking and you talk fast, these are signs that you don't know how to slow down. Your nervous system is not regulated. And a key practice is just to learn to slow down. Learn to take your time with your words. Learn to take your time with your food. This is why, subhanAllah, everything about our faith is about like balance. A lot of people don't know this, but even when I ask you, what is the most important act of worship? You're going to say what? Prayer, right? Do you know that the Prophet ﷺ, when he taught us about going to prayer, I find this, subhanAllah, so fascinating, that if you're going to pray and there's jama'ah, you're praying in congregation, and the prayer already started, do you know what the Prophet ﷺ told us? He told us not to run to it, to slow down. And and whatever you miss, just make it up. Whereas a lot of us would think the opposite, right? That if you're walking into the masjid and they already prayed, you're going to run, you're going to rush, you're going to try to get to it before they get into that sujood, right? But the Prophet ﷺ is telling you, slow down. Why? Because the energy that we take into a space matters. That anxious energy is not settling. It doesn't create health inside. It doesn't create well-being. Energy is a real thing, by the way. And anxious energy, when you're anxious and the kind of energy that feels, and it's not settling, it's not grounded. So my reminder to myself first and to all of you is to create more moments where you can slow down, where you can be sufficed by the present, engage in shukr, engage in istighfar. And it's a muscle. Every time you find yourself jumping to the next moment, come back to the present. Come back to the present, remember its power, and remember that there's no sacred space other than the here and now. I will stop here and take questions. How do I control my body when I'm going through an anxious episode? So as I mentioned earlier, breathing exercises is really helpful because the body is already present. And when you engage in breathing exercises, you're helping regulate your nervous system that is in a state of there's danger, danger, danger. And, unfortunately, in the West, the more comfortable people become, the more anxious they become. You see, like, when everything around you, and this is what's happening in the West, everyone is securing their comfort as much as they can, closing in on themselves. I got my TV, I got my blanket, I got my comfort, I got this and I got that, right? Like I got my feng shui set up at home. I got my aesthetics right. And I'm not saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beautiful and he loves beauty. There's nothing wrong with beautifying our spaces. But our attachment to comfort is going to create more anxiety. And I'll tell you why. When we're uncomfortable, let's say people who are, going through difficulty, they understand they can differentiate between what is actually is a danger and what isn't. But when you are always comfortable, the more you're going to view so many things as a threat to that comfort. The higher your comfort level, the higher the likelihood that you're going to perceive more threats than normal, right? So I can't be around people because this person might trigger me. I can't be around this. I can't be around that. Oh, that bothers me. Oh, this. So the more you become comfortable, the more that your tolerance for discomfort is going to go lesser and lesser. and the more you're going to be anxious about any intruder of that comfort. So just something to keep in mind, that the doorway to anxiety is not by escaping. It's not by coddling ourselves. The door to soothing your anxiety is being able to sit with it and realize that there's a difference between a real danger and something that's a perceived threat. Why am I interpreting that I'm in danger right now? And really kind of getting to the point of assessing, why do I perceive this as a threat when it isn't? And is it a threat to my danger? Is it a threat to my comfort? There's a very big, is it a threat to my safety or a threat to my comfort? So breathing exercises, sitting with it, reflecting, learning to channel it towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and learning to ask different questions is really powerful. So as I mentioned, how can someone know if they have anxiety or just normal emotion? As I mentioned, there's a difference between typical anxiety, typical anxiousness is how I like to call it, and then people who are diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. To be diagnosed with anxiety disorder, there's criteria, and it has to affect your day-to-day functioning. When it comes to typical anxiousness, that it's easier to regulate. But again, I always say take preventative measures. You don't want to wait until you get to a point where your anxiety is not able to be regulated, or it's harder to regulate. So typical anxiousness is what we're going to feel when, we have something coming up. And it can be scary, by the way. It's not always rooted in, at times it's rooted in things that, we are nervous about, we are scared about, but we have to assess, okay, what is scary about this? Why am I perceiving it as something scary? Why am I perceiving this interaction as something that might cause me harm? Really, really being honest with ourselves. And it's a muscle. So the more that you can sit with your anxiety instead of escaping, the more that you actually get to the bottom of it, and the more that you actually learn to regulate yourself and soothe yourself. It's very possible to get to that point. Okay. All right. I will stop here. Jazakumullah khair. I hope this was helpful. And I look forward to continuing the journey with you all next time. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.